A very good evening and a very warm welcome to State of Business on our television. I'm Savindri Jawad and now let's look at the top stories for the day. Pharmaceutical sector delves into manufacturing. National Chamber of Commerce elaborates on tax amendments. News in detail. The National Chamber of Commerce of Sri Lanka recently conducted a seminar on the latest tax amendments. President of the Chamber, Nandika Buddhipala, addressing the gathering, touched upon the media narrative that revenue would not be sufficient to cover expenditure.
When we look at maybe the current situation, we know huge amount of newspaper headlines where the revenue is not going to be sufficient to maybe continue with certain expenditures what we have. But there again, maybe the issue is going to be still the indirect tax. The VAT is taking a big part of the income. There again, when we look at maybe the interest component, which is for the debt existing, which are honored, specifically rupee debt, there is huge amount of interest payment which is going out as well. And the fiscal deficit, even though it is expected to be maybe 7-8%, maybe estimated figures are running into maybe double digit, 12-13% maybe sometimes deficit. So we are running into certain difficulties as we are aware. Then maybe when we look at the previous 1 or 2 years where the revenue came down to about 8-9%, finally when the revenue came down, the expenditures are not going to get curtailed. So finally what happens, the ballooning of the debt has been a serious issue. So now the servicing debt also eroding maybe the income levels of the government. So that is the very brief kind of backdrop that we can think of.
Speaking further, Chamber President Buddhipala commented on the fiscal deficit, which is expected to be a familiar feature in the year to come.
The government income is not going to be sufficient to pay off the government expenditure. So we are, as usual, running into the fiscal deficit continuously, even for this year, the next year. Expectation is to maybe bridge that gap and to at least, keeping aside the interest component, at least to maybe come up with some amount of revenue where the government will be able to meet up with the expenditure. Then a huge part of expenditure is for the government servants. Then there are again maybe about 43 or 50 billion or something more than when we look at the Samurdhi and other kind of the expenditures as well. So it is a difficult time. Then moving forward, how we are going to get into a situation where at least the government expenditure can be meet up with the government revenue is a huge challenge. Then the issue is going to be economy also, like it is expectation of the economy to contract by maybe double digit during this year. There are various expectations for the 2023, 2022 supposed to be 7 or 11%. We don't have the figures, contraction. So this year there are certain predictions which can be about 1% growth. There is certain predictions which can be about 2% minus growth. There is another prediction where it says it can be 4% minus growth. On the top of that, 11% minus growth or 8% minus growth that we expected during this year.
The President of the National Chamber of Commerce also touched on how the policy prescriptions employed do not match the current situation faced by the nation.
So given that kind of a backdrop, how we are going to increase the revenue for the government is a serious issue. Then when we look at that particular aspect, as well as maybe printing of money, the liquidity issues and other issues, then the economy need to revive. How the economy is going to revive is another serious issue. What I personally believe is what we are facing as far as the inflation and other issues are concerned, those issues are not purely coming out from the demand. We don't have a demand. I mean, we don't have disposable income to spend. So how can we have demand-pull inflation? So it is not the demand-pull inflation. I think it's supply disruption very much. When we look at manufacturing PMI and when you look at the service PMI, all are below 50. When all are below 50, meaning we have certain issues in the demand side. So the prescriptions what we are trying to use, I'm not going to be critical, but even IMF themselves accepted the fact that these issues are pretty much COVID-driven and other kind of issues throughout the world. We have something more than that as well. When the policy prescriptions of the current situation what we are facing.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back after the break. The Ministry of Health recently signed forward buying agreements with 12 Sri Lankan investors who are establishing a local pharmaceutical manufacturing sector. Nearly $100 million has been pledged towards pharmaceutical and health manufacturing at the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Zone in Oyamaduwa, Anuradhapura. The forward buying agreements ensure 100% stability for these companies on their investment. Minister of Health Dr. Keheliya Rambukkala has said that these 5-year agreements will be extended and ensured that more tax benefits too would be offered in addition to providing land on a 35-year lease. According to the minister, the aim of the government is to substitute pharmaceutical and related item imports of $700 million with local manufacturing, increase local production to between 60 and 80% and $1 billion through exports from end 2025. The Suwasiripura Pharmaceutical Industrial Estate, which has been designed as a 100% eco-friendly industrial estate, is expected to generate 2,000 direct and over 5,000 indirect employment opportunities. The following companies received forward buying agreements for their investment in the pharmaceutical manufacturing zone. Maliban Bioventures Private Limited with $12 million, George Stewart Health Private Limited with $10 million, Lakshya's Mediline Private Limited with $17.2 million, Premium International Biologics Private Limited with $7 million, Manchester Medicals Private Limited with $5.5 million, Epi1 Health Services Private Limited with $5.5 million, New Life Biotech Private Limited with $6.7 million, Neolina Holdings Private Limited with $1.4 million, Nivaran Private Limited with $7 million, Blue Ceylon Investment Holdings Private Limited with $5 million, Meditech Lanka Private Limited with $5.7 million, and Clean Ozo Bio Bins Private Limited with $3 million. Minister of Health Dr. Keheliya Rambukkala, addressing the investors, encouraged them to look beyond Sri Lanka and compete globally, and he promised government support.
We are a very small market. My advice to you all is not to look at the Sri Lankan market alone, because your investments are huge. Look at the possibility of reaching the outside markets. We will help you as a government. We will do whatever possible. I don't know how long I'm going to be there because the changes are taking place. But as long as I am seated here, I will do my very best, utmost, to make sure that the manufacturing sector flourishes and move forward. You are at the liberty to walk into my office anytime. Discuss any issue. I generally answer the phone unless I'm held up with some important meeting. And I generally say, text me, and I make a point to call back even in the night. That connectivity, that communication is important in this industry or any industry.
While addressing investors who had gathered for the signing of the forward buying agreements, Minister Rambukkala apologized for his past misconceptions in the procurement process. He took time to highlight the complexities inherent in pharmaceutical procurement and the importance placed on maintaining quality.
We spend so much time. There is no compromise. I've been telling my secretary and all, when it comes to health and when it comes to medicine. You can't compromise. And also you can't make arrangements in a hurry. I've been telling this in the parliament, I've been telling this out in the public. There's a shortage of food. If the funding is available, because one of the complaints that we get, or allegations I may say, is that we have got enough funding, but availability of medicines are in short supply. Since this industry was new to me, I was proud in announcing in the parliament, don't worry, our requirement is about $400 million. A year we have got about $550 million, so don't worry, we are not going to be uncomfortable, sort of all sorts of things. Now I'm a little ashamed to say that that's not the right thing to say. I shouldn't have said it. Because I realize if there's a food shortage, a team can go to Pakistan, India, or Bangladesh, or Myanmar, or anywhere, meet some stockist, make the order, dal or price or whatever, within 2 weeks you can have 100 containers sent to Colombo and address the issue. When it comes to health, it is not so. After confirmation of an order, it takes about 3 to 4 months. And you will be surprised as much as I am. We have 18 approvals to go through. And I'm ever grateful to the President. When I went and explained to him, he said, just put it down to whatever you want, and we put it down to basically to the bare minimum now. NMR was another issue, getting approvals. We have changed that. I think the CEO is quite capable of changing it, and not only changing it, also giving a light to it and confidence to the manufacturers and the rest of the people. That does not mean that you have to compromise the quality. Some people are under the impression, by doing so, that you are trying to compromise the quality. I will never do that.
Speaking further, the Minister of Health urged investors to explore all available sources for alternative energy. The Minister stressed this matter as energy costs can have a considerable impact on how competitive players in this energy-intensive industry can be.
I think the power sector is going to be a serious hindrance to this manufacturing sector. We might be out of competition even in the world market if we have to export it. So we need to find alternative ways, alternative energy, which I suggested, I think, last time, that get somebody to make an assessment of the total requirement of the zone, get another investor to do a complete solar system or alternate energy so that the zone can be provided with it. Then the rainwater harvest. I'm also happen to be the Minister of Water and Supply and Drainage. Unfortunately, I don't spend 10% of the time. I've told the President also, give it to somebody, but he wants me to handle it. It's another huge ministry. In fact, former Prime Minister was the minister. The present Prime Minister was the minister. So, leave that as it may be. But I think we came out with many suggestions, new suggestions to Wamadur to make it more lucrative, more interesting, people to get more enthusiastic about it and to come forward. And it happens. Now I think we have grown up to 12, if I'm right, if my figures are right. And it will be, I'm sure there will be more people that will come in.
Stay tuned for the stock update. Welcome back after the break. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a negative note today. The all-share price index dropped 71.47 points to close at 8,262.58, and the S&P SL20 dropped 21.84 points to close at 2,528.08. The turnover was 1.5 billion rupees and over 80 million shares were traded. Up next are Forex trades. With that, we'll be signing out today. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. A very good night.